vacation. He was in Italy for 2 weeks. He sent me a private message. As we're live, the world is getting to know Big Matt. But everyone who's on our site knows Big Matt. Big Matt was out of town. Don't worry, people. Big Matt hasn't left Heat Map Fantasy Sports. He was in Italy for 2 weeks, and I think he's back home. But yeah, he sent me a private message to let me know he'll be out of town. He's like, "Don't worry, I didn't leave." Like, it's like, all right, buddy. It's like I won't be at the live streams. I'm like, it's okay, Matt. You're like, we love having you there, but you're allowed to go live a life. This is Heat Map Fantasy Sports NFL Live Week 4 with Doug and Gutta. Check out my Twitter at Bankster17 to sign up for our service. $3.99 a week gets you access to everything we do, all of our heat maps, all the sports, and we're covering all of them. I believe there's a free roll today for NASCAR if you're a member, so check that out. Steven put up another free roll, and again, it's all part of the less than $4 a week. Check out the pinned tweets at my Twitter at Bankster17, and make sure you give Gutta a follow at the Big Gutta. He's out there too in Twitter land, and we're just getting ready for NFL Sunday. I'm super duper excited. How are you doing today, Gutta?
I'm okay. I'd be a little bit better if DeGrom or Scherzer pitched a little better these last 2 nights.
What's going on with the Mets, man? It's awful. We're gonna blow this, right? We're gonna totally blow this, aren't we?
You know what? One of my friends at the Yankees fan was busting my chops about it, and I told him, I go, it's not really a typical Mets collapse because they still have 98 wins, and it's like the Braves have been playing 800 baseball since like June. Like you can't do anything about that. Like the Mets are still playing like 650, 700 balls. It's not like they've been bad.
Exactly.
But the Braves can't friggin' lose, and when you have a team like that, it's just like you got to win every day for anything to happen. So it's they are
the defending World Series champs, aren't they? Didn't the Braves win last year?
Yeah,
there's that. There's that it's a great team that's catching them. Like, what makes me upset about this is I gave up on the Mets when they signed Jason Bay. To give you an idea of how old I am.
Oh God!
When they signed Jason Bay, I said, you know what? I'm done. I don't like the way that they spend their money. I cannot root for them. I moved to the West Coast at that point. I was like, let me start rooting for the Angels because I love Trout. Of course, they wasted their money too. So I was like, I'm done with them too. Artie Moreno just killed it. So now I'm back in New York, and I'm like, you know what? I love Cohen. He's a great owner. He made some really good, acquisitions. I think he's been smart. Didn't trade away the biggest prospects, right? We still got Alvarez, and like they've still got the guys. I'm like, all right, let's start rooting for the Mets, and it's a great year. And go back to where I was. Now Heath, my brother, would say, "Oh, you're a front runner now," but like they're the Mets. Like you can't be considered a front runner. I back East. It's easy to root for them. They've been. And I left them for the right reason, and I came back for the right reason. But it's very difficult to watch the Mets lose this lead. Now, they're going to make the playoffs, and they're going to be a dangerous team. But, when Scherzer and DeGrom are giving up, 5 home runs in 2 games against the Braves? Like, they haven't given up like 5 home runs all year. Like, come on.
And that's going to be the tough one, too, because, they got a 3-game series coming up with the Nationals. So it's like, the Mets are probably going to win 100 games, and they could get a wild card spot. I mean, either one of those teams, they're both going to win 100 games, and one's going to get a wild card spot. It's freaking crazy.
That is crazy.
Sometimes you just get those years. But we'll see. If they win tonight, they control their own destiny. So it's still one day at a time.
You know what I forgot to do, Gutta? I forgot to post that we're live, and so no wonder but this is good since we're just rambling about baseball for a while. This is a football show, but whatever. We gotta keep people happy, and we gotta talk about.
I gotta pour my heart out a little bit. That's all.
No, I'm with you, man. I'm totally on board. Let's go back to our Slack chat, which is the main delivery service of our site here, which is amazing, by the way. I do love what we do here, and for $4 a week, I should probably put that we're live though. Like this is where I'm at. This was yesterday. I was a complete mess. So I'm just coming around for, I had the COVID shot and it wiped me out as usual. But I'm good now. Like today I'm ready to roll. Let's find where we're at here. Let's retweet it here on Twitter so people know. Goldie's not in the lineup today. This is the wrong sport, Doug. You are talking about the wrong sport. Weather. Talk to me about weather, Gutta. That's what I want to hear. If you're in here and you want to drop questions, please put them in the chat so we can talk about what you want to talk about instead of talking about the Mets, which I talk about all hour. But let's talk about weather. Tell me about weather.
Yeah, I mean, we got there's 3 potentially bad spots. First, the Giant game, that's not going to be out of the 3. It's the least likely for impact. I mean, there probably will be rain, some winds, but we're not really targeting the passing games there anyway. I mean, the only
unless you're my Scott Fishbowl team, where I'm using both Daniel Jones and Justin Fields.
Oh my goodness, that's that
Davis Mills is my other option. What do you want me to do?
That I guess punting QB backfired there.
I'm 2-1. I'm 2-1
Really?
with the shot. I may end up actually, and I know we're talking about the weather, but I may end up. I'm not sure yet. I may end up going off one of those quarterbacks, probably Fields, and instead of using Mills because it's a super flex, not an extra quarterback, I may end up putting in Younghoe Koo instead. I literally may end up using a kicker because I think Koo is Fields has a better chance to get negative points than Koo. I think I might do that. While you're talking about weather, I'm going to go make that change.
Interesting. But yeah,
we'll
see.
So
the Giant game, some impact there. We're not really on the passing games. I mean, the run games are going to be fine. It's a great matchup there. The weather may just help that in a way. I think the Giant side, Richie James is one of the trucks of the week. I think he's still fine. And full on punt, David Sills, I think is still fine because again, $3,000. You don't need that much, and the guy is the Giants' number 2 receiver. So he's, you're only looking for, if you're in a GPP and Sills can give you, 4 catches for 40 yards. I mean, you'll take that all day. So I think everything is fine there.
Yes.
The 2 bad ones, which just happened to be 2 of the higher potential scoring affairs, Jacksonville and Philly, and Buffalo in Baltimore. You're looking, at least 15-mile-an-hour winds, if not more, and rain throughout the whole day. Philly, the rain probably is going to be a little bit better, a little bit lighter with some heavy spurts. In Baltimore, it looks like it's going to be a little worse there. So I think the biggest impact it has is on Josh Allen because he's a bit more of a passer than Hurts and Jackson are. And while Allen still does run, it's a little more ad-libbed and just if the play breaks down type of thing, as opposed to running plays that are kind of planned out or called. Like Allen had that earlier in his career, but they've gotten away from it as he's become a much greater passer. So I think the weather may not be as big of an impact for Hurts and Jackson potentially. It'll affect A.J. Brown, but I think with Hurts, because they do have a pretty decent usage with Dallas Goedert, Hurts may still be okay, and a Hurts-Goddard stack could still do something there. And same thing with Baltimore. Baltimore, listen, it's Jackson and it's Andrews, Bateman has played a role, but I think Bateman, you just got to not consider him because his targets have been mostly deep ones, and that's just not going to fly in this weather environment. But you get Jackson and Andrews. Andrews ADOT is, it's good for a tight end at 12, but they'll throw it a little bit shorter. I think Andrews still gets his 10, 12 target type of thing. And Lamar Jackson runs it a ton. Last week Jackson was, let's see, how many times did he throw it?
Well, I got it up. Last week,
yeah,
Jackson
he threw it 29 times last week.
Times.
Listen, he's been, he's back on that, kind of touchdown rate that he was his MVP season. He was throwing a touchdown 8 or 9% of his passes went for touchdowns. He's on a very similar, if not a higher pace. And the guy's got 100 rushing yards consecutive games. It's always hard to rely on a 100-yard rushing game, but the potential is there. You break one long run and that's it. And plus the rushing touchdown and everything. And with the weather, it's funny. I don't remember who it was, but I heard someone make the comparison. Lamar Jackson's touchdown run last week was the equivalent of a non-running quarterback throwing for 250 yards and a touchdown.
Just from that one run.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy to think.
Yeah.
So I do think the potential is still there for Jackson and Hurts, and hopefully we see some ownership come off of them, that they become a little bit, not contrarian, but just a little less popular, and especially the passing pieces that maybe you still got something there, because it's a damn ugly week at quarterback and just the games in general. I mean, I happen to love Aaron Rodgers this week. I think it's a great spot for him.
My favorite stack is that Green Bay stack.
I mean, I've warmed up on Justin Herbert. I'm a little worried on Mike Williams potentially going up against Stingley, who's been really good to start his career. But Palmer and Gerald Everett are two very good value options that nobody's really looking at. So I think there's some potential there. And I wasn't that crazy about Mariota, but I think you got to maybe pivot to him a little bit and be, have a little more exposure there, especially if Cordero Patterson does end up being out, which we'll find out in a couple of minutes. They're going to pass it a ton more because that backfield is non-existent without Patterson. I mean, Tyler Algier just is not good. Avery Williams, I mean, he'll catch a couple passes, but he's nothing to speak of. And I don't think Damian Williams is back either. So there's really
still IR.
There's really nothing there in the backfield. So it might just be Mariota passing it 35 times and running it 15 times. We could see a Lamar Jackson type of usage, versus their total plays.
So I've pivoted off of those. I've pivoted off those top end quarterbacks in cash. I think they're tournament plays now only because of the weather. It does scare me a little bit. I think if you're going to go top end quarterback, you can't do Josh Allen anymore. It's got to be Jackson or Hurts, probably Hurts. But I pivoted down to Mariota in cash. I do think Geno Smith has a little bit of. I considered Cooper, but I just don't think I can bring myself there. But I think Geno Smith has had the volume for cash. But Mariota's got more of the legs, and it's a good matchup. I think they're both in good matchups. And so I do think there's some opportunity at the lower end. Trevor Lawrence is in that same weather issue, so I have a problem there. Otherwise, he'd be interesting. I don't love Goff because he just lost too many receivers. I think he's still just a tournament play. But I do see myself coming off of the big guys. I would consider Aaron Rodgers. The reason I'm down on Rodgers for cash and just using him, and I love him in tournaments, is there's a chance that Green Bay gets up kind of quickly just using Dillon and Jones, and they just run the hell out of New England. Like, New England's not going to put up a fight in this game, and Rodgers, he hasn't broken 20 points yet this year. He has the point upside if he just goes crazy because the New England pass defense is terrible this year, but I can't go there in cash. And I can't – Wilson also thing for – he hasn't done it yet this year, and I don't trust Hackett at all. But think that, the upside's there for tournament plays. I'm just not trusting him in cash. So that's why I'm kind of sitting where I'm sitting at in cash. I've pivoted personally to Mariota and just spent a little more. The weather's also pulled off Stephon Diggs in cash. I love him, but I don't think we need to go there today. There's other receivers who have similar upside. I think Michael Pittman's in a good spot. I'm locked in on CeeDee Lamb. You've got I think Cortland Sutton, the volume is going to be there for cash if you wanted to use him. Tyler Lockett, Deontay Johnson, Curtis Samuel, all those guys are cash worthy. I think an argument could be made for DJ Moore at his price, given how poorly Arizona's defense has played this year. So I do think there's enough options that we don't need to move to stick with Stephon Diggs. And the one thing, I don't know why I clicked that button. The one thing I have also moved off of, I have Richie James is a core play for me. I've moved off as a core because I don't think we need to lock him in now because we're spending down. If we spend down at quarterback, I would then spend the extra $500 and use Romeo Doubs over Richie James. I also think Rondale Moore at 3,800 is possibly a better play. The weather in New York scares me a little bit still, not as much as the other places, but I don't think we need to use Richie James because the talent's there with the other guys more.
Yeah, the only issue I have with Rondale Moore is he's not a lock to play. I think he's still questionable, and they do play at 4:00. And the way the slate breaks down, if you have more in there, I just don't know what swap options you might be left with.
You need a 2v2. You'd need a 2v2 in that case, and what you need to do is have an opportunity to move $700 up to Dobbs and then pivot down at some other position so you would have to have a 2v2 in that case. And I don't know where you might go. Maybe Jacobs and I don't even know. You pivot down elsewhere to I don't know, Stevenson. And maybe you have just a couple extra $100 sitting around. It's not ideal.
No, I mean the only if you didn't set up for a 1v1, I mean it makes it really really tough. Especially too. I mean if you have more in your flex, You could go down to Tunyon at 3,500, but it's not. It's less than ideal for sure.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So that'll be
Place you can spend down if you wanted to. If you wanted to go all the way down, I actually think Khalif Raymond is in a good or better spot than James. You're saving $900. I mean, who the hell does Detroit have? They don't have anyone right now. They've got nobody. So Reynolds, Raymond, Cephas, my boy Tom Kennedy. I do love me some Tom Kennedy from the preseason. That's one of my preseason guys coming through. We'll see. We'll find out right now. It is that time for us to go in and find out who's not playing, and it could be crazy. We'll have to see. Let's find out.
Okay. All right. Good. So Josh Reynolds is officially active, just in case anybody was worried about his questionable tag. He's fine there.
Gabe Davis is active.
Okay.
Good here. Once again, Jets fans, just Bryce Hall. Not
Zay,
Bryce Hall.
Zay, if anybody was playing,
that's very, very bad. Oh, that
Zay
is.
Jones
Daddy has a lot of work to do right now.
Oh, you had a lot.
Daddy had a lot of Zay Jones today.
Yeah. I was thinking about him. I was waiting to see what happened because his injury was it was in practice later week, and those are never good when you get that.
Yep.
So, but we were talking about the weather. One other thing to touch on as well. I do have Miles Sanders in the GPP pool. Cordero Patterson officially active too. I did have Miles Sanders in the GPP pool, and I think this. My original reasoning was with Boston Scott out, it should give Sanders a little more work, and he should get the goal line work, which would be a big positive in this spot. Mm-hmm. And now with the weather, there could be a lot more viability to him, especially with stacking the Eagles defense. And potentially, too, even I didn't have Devin Singletary in there because I thought for sure it was going to be just a crazy shootout. But Devin Singletary maybe has a little more viability here in this game, especially maybe even stacked with the Buffalo defense, because you're not going to find that anywhere. So that could be a very big possibility with this as well, with your lineup builds. That can definitely help there. So just a little food for thought. And the Bills rushing game has not been great to start the year, but a little project that I'm working on. Potentially this could be a spot that the Bills start to turn it around with their running game, given Baltimore's defense and also the weather ramifications. They may have to change up their game plan a little bit.
The latest reports coming out about the weather is Baltimore looks less bad than
Philly.
Than Philly. Philly looks to be the worst spot. But I'm still not in love because of the wind gusts. The wind gusts are what really gets me.
It's worrisome. So, and just a friendly reminder to all of our people, the Jets inactive, that is cornerback Bryce Hall, not running back Breece Hall. Yep. Just your weekly reminder on it.
We've got to be a weekly reminder. They should just cut Bryce Hall, damn it. Why are they making things difficult for us?
I think I don't quite remember, but I think he was actually pretty decent last year playing corner.
Bryce Hall? Never heard of him.
I think so.
Shows what I know.
I could be misremembering him for someone else. But.
You have Latavius Murray in your lineup. He just scored a touchdown for the Saints with Mark Ingram went to the injury tent. Mark Ingram injury tent. Why is Taysom Hill not getting the freaking carries? I have him as my captain today. Damn it.
Yeah, I did it too.
I went stupid. I was like, let's go Taysom. Nope. Oh, that is not good. That did not turn out well. That was I woke up and was like, it was right before the game. I was like, let's make this happen.
Even hell, without Kamara inactive, I thought Hill was a decent shot just because of Dalton playing. They get maybe a little more creative, but I guess they're sticking to their guns and not going to use Hill as much. So whatever.
So I've got my I'm going into my Rainmakers lineup now, and of course I have Zay Jones in my Trevor Lawrence lineup. So now the question is what to do. Probably to go buy Marvin Jones. What's Marvin Jones going to cost me? Ooh, $150. Let's do it. If you guys are not playing Rainmakers, I think you're missing out. Rainmakers is so much fun. It's great. We're Yep, we're going to buy Marvin Jones right here. Buy him, confirm, put his ass into my lineup. And then we're going to probably sell him before the game starts because might as well. All right, Marvin Jones in the lineup. Daddy's better now. Yes, I call myself Daddy. All right, we're better. All right, let's look at these games here. Cleveland, Atlanta. We'll break it down GPP. Then we'll go, what's it called? Cash. I am going to try to keep to a firm 12:15 time. Oh, let's do a quick question here. Brandon wants to know, Conklin or Tunyon for GPPs?
Probably, assuming it has no effect on your build, I would say Tunyon by a hair.
You're breaking my heart. It's Conklin, unless you're stacking Green Bay. That's the way I feel. So you're going to split. But Gutta is the GPP expert, so Tunyon is the answer we're officially going with for tournaments. In a vacuum, it's Tunyon. Cleveland, Atlanta, GPP-wise, what are we thinking?
So Cleveland, Atlanta. Funny because I'm actually just finishing an Atlanta build for that. So I think that if you use now, all right, let's start the easy side. On Cleveland, you don't want to stack the Cleveland side. I do love Njoku here. I think Cooper is probably set up okay. There's just Jacoby Brissett just doesn't have the upside. They're going to get inside.
Are you not worried? Are you not worried about AJ Terrell with Amari Cooper?
A little bit. I am a little bit, but I think they probably can scheme it well enough to get Cooper open. I think he's going to be peppered with targets, and sometimes volume can get you away from that. So I think he's fine there. But yeah, the Cleveland side, it's pretty much Cooper and Njoku from passing. You can use Chubb if you're not stacking the game. I think Chubb is in a very nice spot here, and it should be a close enough game. He's involved the whole time. Stacking the Atlanta side, Kareem Hunt could be an interesting bring back because he's going to have plenty of role and volume and everything there as well. Again, especially if it is a back and forth type of scoring game. And then the Atlanta side, if you do stack Atlanta, that's probably going to be relatively popular this weekend, or today, I should say. So you get a little creative in your lineup, like the lineup that I just built with the Atlanta stack using Mariota, London, and Kyle Pitts. My two running backs are Miles Sanders and Devin Singletary. Make your lineup unique. You don't have to go crazy and do crazy things, but you target good environments.
From a cash perspective, the only guy I'm really looking at in this game is Mariota. Not just looking at his cash lineup as of right now, which is scary. So scary. But I do think that allows me to do some other things. Again, if you're spending down, this is where I'm going to go. If you're not spending down, I wouldn't touch this game for cash. Just as a side note, I think Nick Chubb is one of the best leverage spots that there is in GPPs this week. I've got a lot of Nick Chubb. If Cleveland can get a little bit of a lead, I think they're just going to pound the crap out of Atlanta on the ground if they can. Ideally, that's what they want to do. I don't know what his number is. Maybe you have that in front of you, but what his total is rushing, I would probably, whatever it is, take the over. And I've got
his prop is pretty high. It's actually at like 91.5.
Oh, yeah, I still think he goes over, but maybe I don't bet that one. Maybe that's more of a fade. And I do, because of the AJ Terrell concern, I do have the slightest amount, maybe just in a showdown, of love for Peoples-Jones here. He did get those targets in week 1. Maybe he comes around here in week 2. We'll see. I'm not totally in love, but I think the best guy you can get here is Njoku. Not for cash, but betting wise, I think whatever his prop do you have that handy? His receptions prop, perhaps. I would definitely look at Njoku as a touchdown prop, and then maybe with his receptions, if it's like 3.5, I'd probably consider that. I'm not sure what it is.
Spot on. Njoku's at 3.5.
Take the over. Njoku's going over 3.5. Atlanta's terrible against the tight end.
Yes.
Baltimore, Buffalo. I know we talked a lot about this.
I was just gonna say, your Njoku point. Atlanta got torched by the three-headed monster of Seattle tight ends. So I think that speaks for what they do against tight ends.
I'm in agreement on that. I have to remember to bet that later. I'm gonna have to go in there and do my stepped up parlay with some Njoku receptions. I'm actually gonna pull that up now so they can at least speak intelligently when I make the bets instead of guessing what the props are. Though that's kind of fun to guess. We've talked about this Baltimore-Buffalo game, but let's really bring it down to brass tacks. How are you playing this game?
So,
you look angry, Gutta. Like you look angry that you even have to discuss this game right now.
It's tough. So, all right. So I'm gonna go at it two different perspectives. So I'm gonna start with the larger field. So what I do every week, I build 20 lineups every week, and I enter them all in the $10,000 dime time or whatever it's called, with like 118,000 entrants. So I'm still gonna, for that type of tournament, I'm still going to build this game as if the weather is a non-factor, because maybe it ends up being a non-factor. We don't actually know, forecasts, especially this close, tend to be relatively accurate, but the way that this storm moves through Florida, and I know we're getting the tail end of it, but maybe it's just going to change course, or the rain is going to be super light and it's going to be a little more wind or less wind and rainy, which rain is a little less impactful on a passing game. So if you're in those large fields like that, I'm using Buffalo, Baltimore, like I was when I was building Friday night and last night, for that. Now, from the single entry and smaller field type tournaments, like the ones that I do, I tend to look for stuff 500 entries and less, and even a couple of qualifiers with like satellites, I should say, with less than 70 people. The only, the exposure here for me would maybe be Devin Singletary, and then really just kind of Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews. I do think the Buffalo passing game for smaller fields like that is just a little bit too risky on it, because if the weather is that bad and impactful, Allen could still throw 25 to 30 times and get you 3 touchdowns. Maybe it's 2 passing and a rushing touchdown, but if he only throws for like 250, Diggs is probably not giving you what you need, and it's just probably not going to work. Like Allen's results could potentially be there, but I don't think any of the receivers could. I mean, maybe it becomes more of an Isaiah McKenzie game if it's going to be like last week with short passes and slants and all that. But I think McKenzie's better in a one-off than stacking, because I don't know if Allen can really get there.
Yeah, I think for cash, like I said, I'm pulling off this game for cash completely. If you were going to go cash in this game, I think it would be Lamar Jackson for his rushing upside, but I don't think you need to be here in cash today, because I do think the percentages are going to come down significantly. The one bet I'm looking at this game, it's dangerous, but the under on 286.5 on Allen's passing yards, I think there's a real good chance that under could hit. First of all, it's a high number anyway, so you're basically saying he's going to throw for 300 yards, which is never a guarantee, even on a high volume type of game. He's hit the 286 in every game this year, but this is a little bit game. It's a road game in weather, outdoors, in a game that they may not be able to get the ball downfield much. I don't know. I think if you're going to make any bet, that to me is the bet that I kind of run with. I also think that what's Lamar Jackson's rush yards at? Let's see. Lamar Jackson, 54.5 rush yards. I think that seems a little low. The over on Lamar Jackson rush yards is probably, if you're going to bet it, probably a decent bet, because if the weather is bad, he's going to run more. So, but I'm staying away from this game completely for cash.
Yeah, I mean, even like the total, it's been all, I mean, it opened at like 55 last week and immediately came down, but it had been hovering like 51.5, 52, and it's down to 50, but it had, you would think if the weather was that concerning that you'd see the under pounded and you would go from 51.5 to like into the 40s, maybe even all the way
Yeah.
down to 48. I mean, it's not moving that much, so maybe there's not that much money coming to it, or maybe the worrisome is not really the concern, you know.
I haven't changed any of my exposure for this game in tournaments. I was, not heavily exposed. So I think it's going to be very chalky. I had some, and I had enough, but I changed pretty much none of my exposure to this game. Otherwise, I may even add a lineup with Lamar Jackson. I don't have a Lamar Jackson lineup. I may do a Jackson Andrews lineup, but I'm not changing it for tournaments. It's just cash that I'm really affecting, because you're right, that total's still up there, and that indicates that this game could still shoot out a little bit. And if the weather's not as bad and the ownership comes down, you have now put yourself in a really good position with high powered offenses. You put yourself in a good position to make some money.
Yep.
Dallas, Washington. I'm sure you're running to stack Carson Wentz this week, right? Not so much.
No. That's a safe no. The only exposure I have here is CD Lamb. It's unfortunate that the backfield is so questionable in Dallas, because this is actually, the Dallas run offense has performed really well, and it's a good spot for the running backs. I mean, the problem is Zeke is 6,100, Pollard 6,000. It's tough to pick one, especially to get you to that 24-point range. It's just really, really tough, because they're they're pretty close to a 50-50 committee. I mean, maybe it's still at 60-40, 55-45, but it's just everything is so split. There's no Pollard sees goal work too. He's not just like the receiving back anymore. So I would like
neither of passes this year. That's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to use one of these running backs, but there's just no way you can figure it out. You really would just be, listen, unless you want to build the same exact lineup and use Pollard in one and Zeke in another and hope one of them goes off on it. I mean, you can do that. I just don't, they'll probably both have decent games, but they'll both give you 16 points maybe, and that's just not doing anything for you.
Yeah. CD Lamb is a lock for me in cash. The target volume is there. Seeing 8 to 10 targets every single week. I mean, he's seen 11 targets or more actually every single week. It's a little worrisome that he hasn't hit 100 yards yet. That ADOT is probably pretty low there, but Washington secondary is just garbage, and so I think CD Lamb in a good position. I would have considered Noah Brown in cash, but I do worry that Gallup's going into that just a little bit. So although Noah Brown has seen a healthy target volume, know how they're going to use him, where I do know how they're going to use CeeDee Lamb. I'm not touching Washington in this game, though. Curtis Samuel is always in the pool for cash the way they're using him at this point. I mean, 9+ targets every week, little rushes a week. I mean, he's going to be involved, but I don't think we need to use Samuel this week as opposed to when he was cheaper. If he was $5K or less, then he's considered, but $5,700, there's other guys in better spots for cash. You brought up Dalton Schultz in Slack the other day, or it might have been in your article. Brought up Dalton Schultz. He is back the game. He should be getting a decent amount of targets, but again, with Gallup back, I worry about what's going to happen. So for me, this is a CD. I do like the CD Lamb prop over 63.5 yards. He's at plus money for over 5.5 receptions. I think that's a really good spot as well. So I'll take a look at that. I just think Washington's secondary is really bad. This game being in Dallas, weather's not going to be a concern. I do like the Dallas defense as well. If I had the money to spend up on the Dallas defense, I would use them in cash as well. They're just getting to the quarterback. That front seven is great. They're yet to give up 20 points. They've yet to give up over 107 or over 200 pass yards in a game, and they played Joe Burrow and Tom Brady. They are getting run on a little bit, but their defense has been pretty strong this year. So I think Dallas is a good spot today.
Yeah, and we don't have to worry about the Cowboys getting run on by that Washington rushing attack. That's for sure.
No, we do not. Seattle, Detroit. This was trending to be maybe the most popular tournament spot this week, but without any receivers to play in Detroit, are we? 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 Are we?
All right. Well, if we're still
playing this game in tournaments,
there he is.
Gutta?
You cut out. Say it. You cut that. It cut out. You want to repeat that? I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say it showed connection issues, which is delightful. This game, the Seattle Detroit game, was going to be one of the highest roster games, and can it be now with Detroit having no receivers? Are we still playing this game? What's your thoughts on this, Gutta?
I mean, honestly, ownership for Hawkinson and the receivers is very, very high. And obviously Jamal Williams, he's actually the number one projected owned back this week. But I think this is a spot you got to be very careful with. I mean, I had it as earlier in the week, one of the top games, but with the way things have changed and all, and realistically, I mean, we're relying on Jared Goff and Geno Smith. I mean, Goff has been okay. Smith has been okay, but Goff doesn't have anybody now. Like Goff has done better with St. Brown in there. There's no DJ Chark. I mean, Josh Reynolds has been actually kind of productive this year as their number 3, but now he's the number 1 receiver. It's a little bit different. So it's a spot that feels kind of like a landmine. It just really, really does. I mean, I do think you can still use pieces individually. I think there is very much an argument for it. Like admittedly have exposure to Tyler Lockett, to Reynolds, and to Raymond, but when you're using guys like that, you're using more of their situation as opposed to the game kind of going off. And that's the big difference when you're using guys as one-offs or like a correlation. Like I've got Lockett and Reynolds in a lineup, for instance. It's much different type of exposure than just outright stacking the game. And I do think because of all the Lions' injuries, and they are the worst team against the running back this year, I think you got a very, very strong consideration for Rashad Penny. And I really like Penny and the Seahawks defense as a stack, because if Jared Goff kind of reverts to Jared Goff, it could be a little bit ugly for Detroit here. So, I think, and also too, the way that I built my lineups, I'm pretty much going to outright fade Jamal Williams. It's very, very risky, but at a 36 to 40% ownership rate, I mean, are we sure Jamal Williams is going to get the passing work? I mean, we already know what Williams is doing in the running game, but he's been very, very good. I mean, he leads the NFL in rushing touchdowns, which, through 3 games, he's got 4. All right, well, maybe his results have been a little bit higher because of that. I don't know if Williams steps in and just gets all the pass down work, and that's what people are anticipating. So if he's just getting the running work and it's either back and forth affair or Seattle, has a double-digit lead at some point, Williams may be worked out of this game very, very quickly. Like there's a lot of negatives here for Williams that could come. So I'd be very careful in this spot.
Obviously, Jamal Williams for me to play because of the high ownership. There's no reason not to play him. If he fails, he fails. But I agree. I have 0% Jamal Williams in tournaments. I have obviously 100% of him in cash. I think that's the way you should play him in this game. Otherwise, in cash, I do think Tyler Lockett, if you're spending in that range, makes. But we talked off air, Gutta and I, about the unreliability of Tyler Lockett. He's a boomer bust guy. I mean, you see even from this season, 5.8 points or 22 or 16. Like there's no middle ground, and there never has been with Lockett. I'm concerned that DK Metcalf is going to get the Jeff Okudah treatment, and if that's the case, then Lockett is going to get to go against some really poor secondary play. So I love him in tournaments. I love him as a mini stack. I think this game, Gutta said it perfectly. It's more of a mini stack kind of a game than the full game stack. You run him back with Reynolds or Raymond, or I haven't asked this question in 2 years, but is this the Quintez Cephas out week? Who knows? I've got much love for Tom Kennedy. He won't do anything, but boy, he was good to me in preseason. Love some Kennedy. In a showdown, I haven't looked at it, but I bet you he's about $200. I think Kennedy in a showdown is definitely a play we can make. And I've got Hawkinson as a run back play as well. If I'm going Hawkinson or Penny Hawkinson, I love in this game at $4,900. He's way too cheap given the matchup with Homer out, there's going to be some room for Ken Walker to do something, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to be Rashad Penny possibly running, 15 to 20 times, getting the majority of the snaps. We'll see what happens there. This game is not quite the fantasy goodness that I hoped it would be coming into this week. But okay, because that spreads the love elsewhere. I think it'll depress ownership in a lot of places. And if you're going to tell me that the highest are Khalif Raymond and Josh Reynolds, then I'm probably going to go in a different direction because that's an easy fade and not complete fade, but easy way to go under the field and get your exposure elsewhere. What about this game? Chargers and Texans. What are we seeing in this game for tournaments? I know you said you were warming up to the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean with the weather, around and the way that certain things have moved. I mean the Chargers now have the third highest implied team total, and depending, they could end up, when all is said and done by kickoff, end up having the same implied team total as Detroit does and be, possibly number 2 on this slate. And they're just, they're going overlooked. I know that Herbert played poorly last week with the rib injury. I mean, frankly, he shouldn't have played last week, but, the NFL is looking pretty poorly on that injury front recently. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a very good spot against the bad Texans defense. The Texans pass defense has actually been surprisingly pretty decent so far. But I think that's more due to the schedule that they've had as opposed to anything else. Like Houston has had the easiest schedule so far through 3 games for their defense. So I think that the early returns on their pass defense are more because of the schedule and not because of anything else. I mean, listen, Stingley at cornerback is very good. And if Mike Williams does get the shadow treatment, it could be a little bit of an issue there. But I think that opens things up for Palmer and Everett, who are 2 very good value options, not really being talked about this week. We've seen Justin Herbert. We know the type of upside that he gets. And also, too, the passing game is going to be a little leverage over a very, very popular Austin Eckler, who I'm very much back and forth on. I know it's a good spot. Houston's run defense is bad. There's the Taysom Hill touchdown.
I don't know why I don't have the game on in the background. I should, but I did.
I'm very, very torn on Eckler. And I think you guys can hear that in my voice and the way I'm even trying to pose this. Because Eckler's he's just not getting. It's weird. He's not getting the work. Like they talked about in the offseason of giving him some breathers and getting more, of the other guys involved in the running downs. And it's happening. I mean, Eckler's barely at a 50% snap share. I mean, he's getting the passing work, but are the Chargers going to need to throw it to the backs that much in this game potentially? It's just I don't know. It's just been such a weird start for Eckler. It's a kind of quintessential GPP type of play, but he's relatively popular from an ownership standpoint. So I mean, my type of thing, I'd probably want to stay away from him than use him if he's gaining some ownership steam, realistically.
How is it that Taysom Hill scores a touchdown and I still can't get into the cash line? Oh, crappy plays. I don't have Greg Joseph. That seems to be the problem. For this game, cash-wise, I, too, am torn on Eckler. I just think the matchup is ridiculous. It's so good. Everyone has run on Houston this year. It's particularly for me because I can just play around with defense. I'm actually spending up for me and being like $2,800, $3,000, whatever it is. So I think I can move down and go up to Barkley pretty easily, but I don't know if I want to. I am very concerned about the 4 attempts last week, but also they were getting just smashed. The 14 attempts make me much happier. The target share is there, and I think with that target share, going up against this crap defense and the touchdown equity, he hasn't scored, but he's excellent inside the 5. He's a very hard-nosed runner for a little guy because he's got that low center of gravity. He's got just thick-ass thighs. The guy can drive inside the goal line. I think he's going to score. I think he's going to catch some passes, and I think he'll get that 10 to 12 carries as well. If he can get you 6 to 8 targets, 10 to 12 carries with some goal line equity, I just think in cash he makes a lot of sense. I'm not really interested anywhere else in this game for anything. I do think they're going to spend down at defense. Houston has the team I've looked at. I'd probably rather have Seattle at 2,400, but Houston hasn't been bad. 6 points in every game this year, haven't given up a lot of points. They've been good enough that, and Herbert is still injured enough, and he looked bad enough last week that if you in a pinch, Houston makes some sense as a punt defense in cash. But other than that, I'm not really looking at this game in anything. I don't even love it for a tournament, which I could be wrong on that one. I've got Eckler in tournaments as a one-off. I'm not running back with anyone. I don't think Brandon Cooks is in a great spot. Tournament, Tennessee, Indianapolis. This is the game, right? This is the game that people are overlooking. Am I right in that? Like this could be interesting from a fantasy perspective, or am I totally wrong here?
Totally wrong.
Okay, fair enough.
No, I mean I do like Pittman. Tennessee's secondary is awful. The Colts defense might actually be at full strength today with Leonard and Bruckner playing today. So I think there's a lot of viability to a Taylor and Colts stack as well. Because Taylor's getting the volume. I think it's just a matter of time until it's there. So we'll see there. I mean, the Tennessee side, I guess there's always the argument for Derrick Henry because he can break any slate. But I mean, I think we kind of touched it last week. We used him last week. He had a good game because he's getting the passing volume, but I don't know. He's just not. Maybe he's just off to a slow start, but he's just not looking like that same Derrick Henry like last year was.
I think he's toast. In general, I've got him in this game. I've got Henry Pittman exposure. I've got Taylor, a lot of Taylor. I think Taylor is a really good spot. He's not getting a lot of ownership because of the spend down options at running back. Top end running backs are not getting any numbers this week, so you can just play them without an issue in terms of percentages, and you'll be fine. So I've got a lot of Taylor. This could be a huge game, and I guess that's what I mean more so as an overlook game, not so much as a full stack, but as a mini stack.
Oh, gotcha. I've been
doing mini stacks in this game. Sorry, I was unclear about that.
Okay. Yes. Yes. In that way, you're 100% right. The individual pieces are very much going overlooked, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I'm doing full stacks. I do think Robert Woods as a run back on Jonathan Taylor isn't the worst idea. He does get volume. And they say they want to get Treylon Burks more involved at $40. It's not the worst spot to get him in there. I mean, he is dynamic, but they've got to get him the football. And I'm ready to, take a shot or two with Alec Pierce. His numbers would look a lot better this year if he didn't get that touchdown against Houston. We'd feel better about him. But I think the 5 targets last week were good. Again, not full stack in this game, but I do have some mini stacks here, and I think there are individual pieces that can play for you in this game. To me, Taylor is the big one. I love Taylor in this game. I got a lot of today. Taylor and Chubb are my 2 most exposed backs in tournaments this week. Giants and the Bears. We've got shockingly 2 cash options, but how do we feel about this game? Tournaments all in, pushing the chips to the middle of the table on this game. It's like Washington.
This is
all in here.
This is Justin Fields week. I'm feeling it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yes. As he says to the guy who just put in a kicker over Justin Fields in Fishbowl. Yep.
No, I mean,
this is nothing, right? I mean,
like we touched before, Barkley, Herbert, and then James or Sills. That's basically it. It's not really nothing else happening here.
Yeah, there's very little to talk about. Cash wise, Barkley's the play. Again, it's between him and Eckler at that high price running back for cash. They're both in good spots. Herbert is lock for cash for me. And I think that's probably the reason Barkley is because I don't want to stack the running back in this game, but Herbert is a lock in cash at his price. He'll be the second highest owned player on the slate in cash. I'm not really worried at all there. Richie James, if you want to spend down, but the spend down options are starting to open up. And Jones, who's cheapish, not that you necessarily want to play him. You've got Khalif Raymond, you've got Romeo Dobbs, you've got Rondale Moore, who I know you don't love, but I don't think Rondale Moore is any worse than Richie James. Better offense, better talent, better weather. So I don't think Richie James is quite the lock that we expected him to be earlier in the week when there was no value. Jacksonville, Philly. How are we? Marvin Jones. Yeah, Marvin Jones is a little too expensive, 4,300 for cash. How are we doing? How are you playing this game? Are you playing this game in cash at this point, or are we done?
I mean, not in cash. No. Yeah, you can't touch it in cash.
Oh, I meant GPP. Sorry, I said cash. I meant GPP. Sorry, I pulled all my exposure to this game in cash. I won't touch this game in cash.
Yeah, I mean GPP. As mentioned earlier, I think you can have an argument for Hurts, Goddard. I don't think the receivers you can kind of use. I mean, again, if you play in that 118,000 entry, make your lineups as if the weather doesn't exist. For the most part. But those smaller field type things, like the way that I play, no wide receiver exposure here, maybe some Hurts, Goddard, and then I think Sanders and the Eagles defense makes a ton of sense with the weather and everything, and Boston Scott being out.
Sorry, my dad is calling for some reason. Yell let them know I'm streaming. He seems to forget that I do this every week. He should be watching. He's the dad who cared. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'm not touching this game in cash. Tournaments, I'm not changing my exposure at all on this. I didn't have a ton to this game anyway. It's sad that the weather's going to affect this game. It could have been a great game, and I think it could be less great. Jets, Pittsburgh. Oh, we get to talk about the Jets. And I think there's a legitimate discussion to have about the Jets today for the first time. Well, I think the last few weeks. I think the Jets are an interesting team. Tell me how you feel about this game in tournaments. Is this game at all on your for tournaments?
I mean, the Jets side, a little Breece Hall sprinkled in. He looks to possibly be starting to make a move here. The Pittsburgh side, Deontay Johnson's actually projected to be the highest owned receiver this week, which I don't know why. I don't know what. I mean,
like of anybody or just in this game?
No, of the whole slate.
Really?
I mean,
should he be in cash? A pass?
No, I don't want to. I mean, I guess he's fine for cash if you want to. If you're in that range,
yeah. He's in the
depending
pool.
How you're.
It's in the pool.
Yeah, I mean, depending how your roster shakes out, but from a GPP standpoint, unless something really changes with Trubisky, I mean, it's I think maybe from that vein. So if you're looking at it that Johnson's going to be the highest owned receiver, so maybe I am missing something. Then George Pickens probably makes a ton of sense then there also because something's going to happen with Deontay that they think that people are thinking he's going to have a big game or the Jets weak secondary, all that type of stuff. Then Pickens at 3,800, he's in that value area where so much ownership is being concentrated. Why not use a value guy that arguably has as much upside as any of the other value guys, if not more, because he's probably the best player out of all, out of the Richie James, Josh Reynolds, Cleve Raymond, cast. Why not take a shot with that upside? And then I think also the Steelers defense makes a ton of sense, especially stacked with Najee Harris, because Zach Wilson will probably be running for his life with that banged up offensive line.
He'll see ghosts. That's a Darnold thing, but I do think. Listen, I've got the Gronklin as my cash option, and there's really no one for me in cash at tight end this week. I just think he's the perfect mix of target share, price, matchup. Steelers haven't been great against the tight end. We don't know if Zach Wilson is going to treat him well, but let's hope. And I do have quite a bit of love for Najee Harris, Elijah Moore in tournaments. Not so much in cash, but Najee's an outside opportunity in cash if you need to spend down a little bit for your highest running back. Big game against the Jets this week. Jets are not good against the run. We're not seeing a lot of explosiveness out of Harris, but this could be the week where we see that. And then Elijah Moore, not for cash, but in tournaments, I do like Elijah Moore this week. We know Musson likes him. Target volume's kind of for him. He just hasn't done anything with it. This happens. I've got a large amount of exposure to Elijah Moore this week, so that's kind of where I'm at for this game. I think I've taken the over on Elijah Moore props. I think this is the week he breaks out. And I'm probably way too exposed to him, but him and Zach action. So that's where I'm at there. What about this Carolina game? Do we like this for tournaments?
Nah. I mean, not particularly.
Okay. They said, yeah. I'm like, what am I missing?
No, I mean, I think there's an argument for Christian McCaffrey here, given the Arizona defense, but he is a game time decision. And if you've got that salary in there for the 4:00 game, I mean, your options are going to be so limited on what you're going to pivot to. If he's in your flex, you're going to pivot to Devontae Adams, or if you're only playing 2 running backs, your really only option is going to pivot to Aaron Jones. And I don't know if you're going to have any other 4:00 exposure to make changes. So it's a very, very, very tough decision there.
But if I may jump in on that, on the other hand, that will keep his ownership down. So if he plays and he is there, you can have a real huge upside play with him. You just have to understand you're going to have to pivot to Aaron Jones or Javonte Williams if he's out, and you're going to just eat some of that salary, right? But the risk, because it's McCaffrey, the reward could be worth the risk. I have no McCaffrey, but it is from a gamesmanship standpoint. There is some thought there that could be in your benefit.
Yeah, and then
do you like Arizona, or is Team Midget? It sounds probably really rude. Team elementary school student, that seems better. Team elementary school student, is that there for you?
No, I mean, there's been a couple of builds where like my last position has been in the salary range of like 62 to 6,500. So, and Connor is always kind of smacking me in the face there. I think Connor's the only one that maybe you can kind of look at, because if, let's face it, Carolina's offense sucks right now. If that continues and they don't do much here, Connor's going to be involved the whole game regardless. But if it's a closer, like Arizona's going to run it more, that's much better for Connor. And he's always got, he's got all the touchdown equity for this team. So there's a real viability for him, but it's going to be one of the more riskier plays there. But I think there's something to it. And frankly, his price is really, really depressed as well.
Yep. I mean, Connor's target volume is there. For me, from a cash perspective, I can make an argument, I suppose, for Rondale Moore, but we've discussed him ad nauseum. I'm actually using the Panthers defense. Their defense is much improved. Murray does not look particularly strong this year. Carolina's been okay. They're not great, but they've been okay. I think West Coast team coming east, it's not an early game, but I just think Arizona's kind of a mess right now. So I have been using the Panthers, or I will be using the Panthers defense in cash this week, which is kind of scary. And I've been doing a lot of DJ Moore, Rondale Moore mini stacks. I just think DJ Moore's too cheap. And Arizona's secondary has not been good. Otherwise, I don't have any exposure. This could be one of those weeks, though, just in a tournament perspective, where you could get Kyler Murray at a lower price, and nobody is going to on him. Actually, it's his highest price of the year. So I'm off that lower price thing. I didn't realize this. But I mean, the volume, he's a ton. He's not running at all. There's something wrong with Kyler Murray. I don't like his demeanor either. I think Kyler Murray is just, he never looks happy. He always looks like he'd rather be somewhere else, probably playing Call of Duty. I don't know. I'm very anti-Kyler Murray. It's his body language. I have a real problem with his body language. And so I just think I think the team is in trouble. I don't think they like their coach. But I do think because of the lack of people being on this game, there's an opportunity if Murray can get healthy and get straight.
Potentially. I mean, hey, maybe he should have played baseball.
Maybe he should have. I did say I wanted to keep a hard time limit of 12:15, but obviously we need to finish this up. So we're going to run through these last 2 games, and then I've got hot food waiting for me upstairs because that's what's important. New England, Green Bay, tournament wise, we like Green Bay, right?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I put this in my article that I messaged you last week when Green Bay started hot and Rodgers had already thrown 2 touchdowns. That I was pissed I didn't think about Aaron Rodgers at sub 5% ownership. Well, we're getting another opportunity this week, and not all in, but I'm going to be probably pretty heavily exposed to Rodgers here because I just think it's a really great spot. They've got a high implied team total. They're big favorites. The Patriots defense is just not very good. Belichick is kind of in over his head right now, and it's just set up very, very well for everything in Green Bay here. So if you're stacking, I'm looking at a combination with Rodgers, obviously, with some combination of Jones, Lazard, Dubs, and Tunyon. And Stevenson's the only guy I'm considering as a bring back. And then there's obviously very much an argument for either Jones or Dillon stacked with the Packers defense.
I'm very overexposed. I mean, I have a Dobbs in cash. I just think he's starting to gain Rodgers' trust, and he's a far more talented receiver than Allen Lazard. Lazard is a great blocker. Lazard's a good number 2 or 3 receiver, but he's not an alpha, and Dobbs looks like an alpha right now. Lazard's good in the goal line, but I don't think he's the guy I'm stacking here. What I am doing is I am stacking Rodgers with I do not like Tunyon. I'll be stacking Rodgers with Aaron Jones and Dobbs, and then bringing back Stevenson. I'm probably way over the field on Stevenson simply because I'm using him as the run back for Dobbs all over the place, and so because I have a lot of exposure to Dobbs, I've got a lot of exposure to Stevenson. Not that I think he's great, but I do like a run back. And if the Patriots do get down, I'm fairly confident this 5 targets, is going to be the floor, especially with Ty Montgomery still on the IR. I just feel like this is a good spot for. It's a good spot for Stevenson here to put up a sneaky like 15 points. Like he's gonna come away for 15 points. Green Bay will win 31-12 or something, and you're gonna see 15 points from Steve. How the hell did he get there? And it's just gonna be a bunch of dump offs and garbage time shit. So sure. Denver, Vegas. What do we like in this game?
I love Javonte Williams here. I think he's got, arguably as much upside as any other running back. I think I love the kid. I love what he does. He's not going to carry very much ownership. The Raiders defense struggles against the run. They struggle in general. So I think it's a really good spot for him. I'll have some Cortland Sutton exposure as well because he's Russell's clear number 1 target. And that's kind of it. I mean, the Vegas side, I'm probably not really touching. I'm going to end up with 1 or 2 lineups with, Adams Sutton correlation, just because a guy like Devontae Adams always has that sky high potential. But the Broncos secondary is brutal. I mean, it is a tough matchup. Devontae Adams can beat anybody, but even for him, this is a very, very tough matchup. Carr has not really started off very well, and it's a struggle right now in Vegas, and the wheels could come off the bus very, very fast there with an off season of hype. Josh McDaniels coming in, and they're already started out 0-3. So it's just something I'm not really looking at the Vegas side at all, except for maybe a sprinkle of Adams in there.
Yeah. I have 1 share of Adams. I have more Waller as a run back on Broncos minis. I do think Broncos are good for tournaments. I like Russell Wilson. Cash-wise in this game, I can make an argument for Cortland Sutton at his price point, but I'm not going to. Matt Collins is definitely not the cash option. We should have played him in cash last week. We were talking about him. I think it wasn't a big deal, but he was such an obvious smash last week, and not playing him was dumb. This week at 4,200, I think he's a play as a run back in a tournament if you needed to, but at 42, not really a value anymore. I mean, again 300 more, I get Dobbs, so I'm much more excited about that. A lot of the other guys we've talked about at the lower end, I don't love Adams. I have the 1 piece just in case he does something, but I don't see it. All right, that's it. We've run through every game. Gutta, give me 1 takeaway from this week. Give me one last comment, 1 last idea. What's gonna happen here?
Oh,
Aaron Rodgers talking about at the end of the week.
Aaron Rodgers 5 touchdown passes. Let's go very bold.
Yeah, dude, yep, would make me so freaking happy if that happens. I think my big takeaway from the week, or my 1 surprise thing or something. I've been talking about it on Twitter, and I've been talking about it in whatever. I've got a lot of exposure to him in Rainmakers. I invested heavily. Elijah Moore is going to be in the Million Maker winning lineup. I think Elijah Moore has himself, 6 or 7 catches, 100 yards, and a touch. I'm there on Elijah Moore. That's I think Zach Wilson's what Elijah Moore needs to get himself back on target. And I think in general that Jets-Pittsburgh game surprises people, and it is far more tournament worthy than anyone thinks. That or I'm blinded by your Jets love, and I just buying in. That is it. This has been Heat Map Fantasy Sports Week 4. Come check us out. Check my Twitter pinned tweet, $3.99 a week, gets you access to everything. Thank you for the time. We will see you next week.